UK hauliers and exporters are warning of long delays at ports if French border authorities do enforce post-Brexit checks as expected. Well, the warning comes as the logistics firm DPD says it's experiencing a high number of vehicles being turned away at Anglo-French ports due to incorrect paperwork. Scottish seafood businesses are also warning that their industry is facing a perfect storm. Well, let's bring in Shane Brennan, who's Chief Executive at the Cold Chain Federation. Shane, morning to you. What are hauliers being asked to do that they weren't previously?
Well, so many different things. There is a huge amount of paperwork. Previously, we would you get a load of goods and you take it through the border and you take it to a customer in the single market. That's how that works. Now there are customs paperwork, there is export health, if it's a meat or dairy, export health certificate, if it's grains, it's phytosanitary, if it's fish, it's catch certificates, it's customs declarations, a whole raft of different moving parts now that have to be sort of brought into line in order to effectively move trade through the border.
And how long is it roughly taking the average haulier to get through compared with previously? Is it possible to say?
The biggest issue at the moment is that we are in this very sort of unusual kind of weird period of calm. So on New Year's Day, the trade was at 10% of levels. It's built up to about 50% of the volumes by the end of this week. That is significantly lower than we would normally have at this time of year. And it's not Brexit, it's also COVID. There's a bit impacting on that. So it's a false period. The reality is, though, that we're going to start to see that trade ramping up through next week. And I guess the concern is, as the French authorities will quite rightly say, you've got to be compliant with the rules that are now the law, but we're going to start clamping down on that. They're going to clamp down on that at exactly the same time as the trade starts to ramp up. And that suggests potentially quite a significant problem.
Are people working on the border controls being quite pragmatic, or are they being real sticklers for the rules?
They're being pragmatic and they're trying to be helpful. I think everyone here is learning as they go. These rules are 14 days old. Let's be clear about that. So everyone is learning as we go, and everyone at every stage of the process. So we're all trying to work together right now. But the message they are saying is, we have a law to enforce, and we are going to enforce it to the letter. And if they do that, because there's so many different moving parts we're talking about, something is potentially going to fall down. Potentially not through no fault of anyone. It's just not quite understanding how the rules work yet. And also misinterpretation. People have different views. The more detail you get into, the more likely it is that one person thinks they've got it right and the other person doesn't. And so it's going to take quite a lot of time for that all to settle down.
Should the government have introduced an implementation period with the EU?
The government should have asked for an implementation period with the EU. Now, this is the crucial thing here. Ultimately, the UK government can't do much about this anymore. This is all about what the French authorities, the Irish authorities, the EU authorities want to do. And I guess our plea is to them, please be pragmatic, please work with us, please understand that the route to compliance is businesses, helping businesses, having to understand the concerns and problems they face, and then over time we will get to that compliance point. If we enforce the rules and turn everyone away and sort of hard medicine approach, that will lead to significant shortages and disruption both ways in trade between the UK and the EU.
I mean, I mentioned in the introduction there, DPD, trade volumes are very, very low at the moment. I mean, anecdotally, there's a lot of talk of hauliers giving channel crossings a wide berth at the moment. Is that actually the fact?
It's absolutely the fact. I mean, the trade numbers bear that out, 50% of volume right now. And it will ramp up more, but there are other ports, and there are businesses that are looking at how they can do other things and move things into other areas. But in reality, fresh fruit and vegetables, fast-moving products, they need to come through that road connection, if you like, between the UK and the continent. There is no plan in place to change that supply chain right now. And it's going to change fundamentally, and it might in a year's time. It's not ready to do it now.
So if the French really go for it next week and really start to enforce the rules, what proportion of crossings do you think are likely to face delays? Is it possible to put a number on that?
The UK government has a reasonable worst-case scenario that they've been talking about for the last 6 months. Between 40 and 70% of trade would be impacted or reduced. So that's the sort of number that feels realistic.
Shane, that's a hell of a spread. You could drive a Pantechnicon through that.
It's the government's numbers.
Right. How long do you think it's going to take then for hauliers to get used to the new rules?
It's going to take weeks, if not months. Because it's not necessarily to people literally parked up and unable to move for weeks and months, but getting this system to work seamlessly. This is a fun. There are 12, 15 different moving parts. There is millions of tons of trade going through this process, and businesses are going to have to reorganise and look at these things from root and branch, and they're going to be doing that over the next year, 2 years. But obviously, trade flows will find ways to problem solve and get stuff through. So supply chains are resilient, and they will find ways to make this work in the short term. But it'll be sticking plasters and patching things through for a long time before we feel like we're confident we have a workable, seamless border with the European Union.
And obviously, it's a hideously complex subject, but is it possible to sort of put a figure on by how much costs may ultimately go up for the end consumer as a result of all this?
It is really hideously complicated to answer that question. But, government estimates have talked about 5%, 10%, and you've seen the retailers in the reports that they've been talking to the Prime Minister about over the last couple of days about how these non-tariff barriers that exist are significantly costly. So actually, price inflation is likely to be part of the picture for the medium term.
All right, Shane Brennan, good to see you again. Much appreciated. Thank you.